I'm President Donald Trump, and I have the greatest hair you've ever seen. If you watch Liquid Lunch, you'll see that John Tobacco has probably one of the worst hairlines ever. But watch it anyway. It's a good show.
You're watching Liquid Lunch on NEWSMAX TV. I'm Frank Morano sitting in for John Tobacco. Well, the whole world is transfixed on a federal courtroom in Washington, D.C. right now, where longtime Trump confidant Roger Stone is on trial for witness intimidation, witness tampering, lying to Congress, and obstruction of proceeding. We're very pleased to be joined now by someone that knows Roger quite well and knows a lot about the witness that's testifying against Roger today. I'm talking, of course, about the former Manhattan Madam, former New York gubernatorial candidate, and longtime Roger Stone confidant, Kristin Davis. Kristin, it's great to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Frank.
I love that shirt.
Well, you can go to stonedefensefund.com and get your own.
It says it all, especially on you, Kristin. It really does. So tell us, you ran for governor in the year 2010. The running mate for the anti-prohibition party that year was Randy Credico. Roger Stone was your campaign manager. I worked on that campaign as well. Tell me, what's the story with Randy Credico and Roger Stone?
Well, first, let's say that he was my candidate because you were not old enough to be my candidate.
That's true.
I approached you. So, but Randy Credico was an acquaintance of Roger Stone, sort of a frenemy. He brought him into that campaign with us, and he's been awful every moment ever since. He started a fight at one of the events. They got into a fist fight, him and Roger. He's threatened him numerous times over the years. Threatened to kill him. He's called me at 2 o'clock in the morning, drunk, high, threatening Roger through me because Roger wouldn't pick up his calls. I mean, he's a stalker and he's relentless.
Okay, so now the whole gist of this case is that Roger claimed, he testified voluntarily before Congress, that Randy Credico was the intermediary between himself and Julian Assange of WikiLeaks. Randy says that's not the case, that he was not the intermediary. So Roger's being charged with lying to Congress in part because of that, and in part because of these text messages that he sent to Randy threatening his dog and everything like that. Let's begin with the intermediary aspect of this first. What has Randy said on the stand yesterday and today about whether he was in fact the intermediary or not?
Right. Randy said yesterday that he agreed to take messages from Stone and pass them on. He just barely got off the stand right now, and he said today when on the cross, Stone's attorney, Bushell, asked him, so you're saying you were a fake back channel. You agreed to take messages and pass them on. You also, led Stone to believe that you were close with Assange by having him on your show, taking pictures outside of the Ecuadorian embassy. And Credico basically said just maybe 30 minutes ago that he one-upped Stone, that he was afraid of Stone and couldn't play at his level, so he one-upped him, and that was his revenge, basically.
So let's talk about the witness intimidation aspect of this. There's text messages where Roger says to Randy that he should do a Frank Pantangeli. It's a character from The Godfather Part 2. It's characters where he's threatening to take his dog away from him. Text messages where he's threatening to take his dog away from him. Based on your reading of the text messages and your knowledge of their relationship, was this in fact witness intimidation?
This was not witness intimidation. They have a horribly toxic, abusive relationship in which they both threaten repeatedly to kill each other. But Randy Credico just said, this is sort of breaking, that he knew that Roger wasn't actually going to take his dog, that it was hyperbole and that he didn't take it seriously at all.
All right. Well, it's certainly going to be interesting. Now, back when you were interviewed by Robert Mueller, you went on CNN on Chris Cuomo, a network that our own Chris Ruddy goes on quite often, or an anchor that Chris Ruddy talks to fairly regularly. And this is a little bit of what you said about your relationship with Roger Stone. Take a look at this.
Did they ask you any questions, the grand jurors?
They asked me a few.
What was it about for
Mostly
them?
just my relationship with Roger Stone, the sort of work that I do for him. I mean, we've talked about that. He's one of my closest friends. Both him and his wife are my child's godparents. So they're friends, as well as I do work for him on occasion.
Now, here I am, the other godfather to Carter Stone Davis, completely not mentioned in that Chris Cuomo interview. Roger's mentioned, the wife is mentioned, and I'm looking around and it's like, nothing. How could I not get mentioned? Since I felt like I got divorced as a godparent from the Stones.
I am sincerely hoping that you don't ever cost me $30,000 in legal fees and have me subpoenaed to go in front of a grand jury and talked about on CNN for days at a time. What does the madam know?
I just want to make a donation to the Roger Stone Legal Defense Fund. How can they do that?
They can go to stonedefensefund.com. If they also want to support the cause, I encourage you to go on social media and use the hashtag, tweet President Trump, and ask him to look into the case and pardon Roger Stone now.
Based on what you've read, I understand you haven't been down there at the trial yet, but based on what you've seen and read, do you think Roger is getting a fair trial?
Roger's not getting a fair trial. The jury pool stacked against him. He's going to trial with no Republicans on his jury pool. He wasn't allowed to present defense arguing that the DNC was not illegally hacked by the Russians and that there was no corrupt intent behind him obstructing the justice. So it's ridiculous.
It seems odd that an investigation that resulted in an indictment that began investigating Russian collusion, it seems odd that the defense can't even bring up Russian collusion, doesn't it?
Right. The prosecutors can talk about it and can talk about that you were trying to find this and that out, but we can't talk about actually whether or not it happened because everybody continues to want to push this no collusion or this collusion narrative, and we're not allowed to present any real actual facts.
Kristin Davis, proud to call her a friend. She's a great friend to Roger Stone. Thank you for helping us break down the trial today.
Thanks for having
hopefully
me,
we'll
Frank.
see you again. And free Roger Stone. Roger Stone did nothing wrong.
That's
the
right.
whistleblower and I will be joined by employment attorney Jonathan Bell next. You're watching Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm Frank Morano.